Welcome to the Hokie Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Pete B, and I've got Ed Williams here. Ed, how you doing on this beautiful Sunday?
Well, as good as I can. Since the last time we recorded, we've lost two games, one of which to Jacksonville, and we're recording the day after the football team's loss at Duke. So, um, anyone who's on Virginia Tech internet right now knows how everyone's feeling. So,
hmm
we figured what better time than to record a podcast?
So, if I'm not mistaken, you were out and about last night, not necessarily locked into the game, which could have been a very good thing.
Yeah, no, I was at a concert. I was at Charles Wesley Godwin in Silver Spring. So, I
Nice.
was trying to follow the game as much as I could on my phone, but based on what I saw in the various group chats and the condensed game this morning when I went back and watched it on YouTube. It was a good one to miss, I think.
Yeah, well, we're not going to talk so much football today. Me and Sam will get into that later tonight. I know Pat and Bill will be recording once they get back from Durham tomorrow. But we're going to talk about the Virginia Tech men's team, the Virginia Tech women's team. The men dropped a couple in a row to fall to 3-2. Penn State, we knew would be tough, but none of us expected that Jacksonville loss. So we'll break down both of those games. And I did want to remind the viewers of the Hokie Hoops pod, we're going to be doing a live game watch. Whether you like it or not, on 12/4, we're going to be watching the Vanderbilt game on the Sons of Saturday YouTube channel, reacting live, all that good stuff. Sam will be there. Ed will be there. I'll be there. Some others might chime in depending on which volunteers we get from the Sons of Saturday team, but that will be fun. It's a late game. It's like a 9:15 tip or something on December 4th against Vandy. So we'll know some players on Vandy. You guys already know who they are. We got Tyler Nickel. We got MJ Collins. Plus, you got the Hokies playing them, and it's in Castle, right? That's a home
It
game.
is. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
So that'll be fun. So tune in for that. I want to start, Ed, talking a little bit about the women because they have looked really good since the Iowa loss. They're 5-1. They beat Rutgers last week, and that's a nice opponent to take care of. And they beat Elon on Saturday. But something stood out in that Elon game. Tell us what it was.
Yeah, Rose Mishaw, triple double, second in program history. So that was really exciting. She's been a walking double double all year for Virginia Tech. She's averaging almost a double double, 15 and 9.7 rebounds. So the double double part has been coming, but the assists were something we hadn't really seen out of her, and they did a really good job of running the ball through her at the high post, and she was just making really good reads. Their teammates were finishing the job for her. So very exciting. Congratulations to her, second in program history. So
It's
that was
pretty
big
cool,
time
man.
stuff. Yeah, very
19,
cool.
14, and 10. And then in the Rutgers game, you said she's getting double doubles. Like it was 16 points and 17 rebounds.
Yeah.
I think she had like 9 offensive rebounds in that game. She's playing absolutely amazing. And if we want to make the tournament for the women's team, like you need her to do this kind of stuff or needed somebody to step up. And Wenzel's been doing really well too. She had 19 points against Rutgers. Eck had 13. Suffern had 16. There's a little bit of a similarity here, though, with the women's team to the men's team in that I'm not sure who the true point guard is of the women's team right now.
Yeah, they kind of can play a few different people there. Carly's so versatile; she can play on or off the ball, and she's having a fantastic season. I wrote down she's averaging 16 on 40%, so she's just playing really, really good in that new lead guard role that she's put in this year for the first time in her career. But then you can also have Mackenzie Nelson or Samaya Suffren bring the ball up as well. So there's a little bit of a point guard by committee, but Carly on the ball has been really, really successful for our offense so far this year.
What's the deal with Mackenzie Nelson? Because I'm not so familiar with her game, but I noticed she was getting assists and she's playing a lot more. So what's her deal?
She's kind of like a prototypical point guard. Looking at the stat sheet, she's averaging 24 minutes a night, 6 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2.5 steals. Kind of just does everything. Was a really highly rated player coming out of high school, and obviously chose to redshirt her freshman year. We had a point guard last year. She wasn't going
Yeah.
to see the floor a whole lot, so she decided to sit back and learn. And it's paid off so far early in her sophomore campaign, where she's filling up a stat sheet in every category and playing really, really good minutes for the Hokies.
Yeah, man. And unlike the men, they are shooting a little bit better than the
Oh yeah,
men's team. The women are. It's nice to see Suffering getting some points in that Rutgers game. I'm not sure how deep this rotation goes right now. Would you say we have 8 that we can rely on?
yeah. I think we do. Those eight, everybody's averaging almost 20 minutes a night. So it's a pretty even minutes distribution across those eight. But it certainly seems like, Duffy trusts those eight players to play all of the minutes, and it's a really good rotation. The only concern would be, when, if or when Rose Michaud gets into foul trouble, you don't have a true, big center five player coming off the bench to backfill for her. So I think that's something that we'll have to pay attention to as the year progresses, whether it's Ramaya White or Maya Hazelton, one of the two freshmen, being able to fill that role. And we saw that become an issue in that Iowa game when Rose got in foul trouble. But outside of that, everybody else is pretty, you can kind of cycle everybody else through at all the different positions. Karis Baker's really versatile. Kale Peterson's really versatile. So it's a solid rotation. They just need to figure out, what to do if Rose gets into foul trouble.
I'm waiting for Karis to turn on just a little bit more. Like she's obviously a good shooter and going to be a big part of this team, but she hasn't come up in so much of like whether it's stat sheet or whatever. But if she breaks through and like starts playing like I know she can play, like this team could take it up a notch too, I think.
Yeah, she's playing in a completely different role this year. Last year she was playing out on the wing kind of as a spot up 3-point shooter, and now she's being asked to play down on the inside, and she has the size to do that. She's plenty tall enough to, to bang around down there and get rebounds and stuff, but it's a completely different role for her right now than what she, was as a true freshman. So I think it's just a feeling out process, and there'll probably be some adaptations to how she plays, start the possession on the inside, bounce to the corner, hit a three, she's a very versatile player. So I expect her to continue to come on as she gets more comfortable in the role.
I kind of forgot that she was a true freshman last year.
Yeah.
Like that's what's kind of, again, another reason you can expect her to continue to grow under the new coach. I'm looking at the top 25 for the women's, and we know that there's always a bunch of ACC teams in there. The ACC is incredible in the women's sport. And when it comes to what you're thinking for the Hokies, in order to make the tournament, you probably got to be the number 9 ACC team, something like that. Do you see us like getting to that level? Do you think that this is a best case scenario for this team, like the 7th team in the ACC, something like that? Or
as the season's gone on, I do. I mean, as you see Carly Wenzel, Karis Baker, Samaya Suffren, Mackenzie Nelson, all these young players continue to find their footing. Carly's been around for a while, but hasn't played as many minutes as she is now. And then in Samaya and Mackenzie's, case, this is the first real minutes they've played in their careers. Karis played a lot last year as a role player, but as all these players continue to find their footing and their new roles in this new system, I texted Billy in the middle of the week before what was the game we just had the triple double in? Who were we playing in that one?
Elon,
yeah. Before the Elon game, after Rutgers, and I was like, I think this is probably a tournament team, and I do think somewhere in that 7, 8, 9 range in the ACC would get that job done. And it's an exciting group to watch play, and I think they'll continue to get better, and they'll be knocking on the door of that tournament in year one with Duffy, I believe. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's 5 teams ranked right now. Cal 6-0, Georgia Tech 6-0, Miami's 5-0. It's going to be a tough road, but I really like what I'm seeing, and a number of these girls that are back from last year, like they know how to win, and they know how to win in ACC play. So that's an exciting prospect too. Let's do something that's not quite as fun. We'll move on from the women. We'll start talking about the men here, and I want to talk about the last 2 games we played. Penn State, that was last Friday night. In that game, our main issue was turnovers, at least to me. I know the shooting is tough, but we had 24 turnovers in that game. It was the most the men's basketball teams had in a decade. And I thought their length would really bother us prior to the game, and it did. We had a really hard time passing the ball. We only shot 28% from 3. Jaden Young was 0 for 4 in that category. Just 1 of 6 overall in the game from the field. Burnham actually had his best game. 8 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists in only 12 minutes, but somehow he also managed to foul out in 12 minutes. So we just did not play well, just not at all. And even though we out rebounded them, we had turned the ball over so much. It didn't matter. And it was disappointing, but kind of expected. Then you go to the Jacksonville game, and I don't know if you texted me before the game, but you were like, Tyler Johnson is starting instead of Young. And I I suppose coach just said, let's try to bring Young off the bench and see if that kind of sparks something different with his shot. But Tyler Johnson, I thought, had earned that starting spot through his first few games. And the first half for the team was pretty solid. We had a 10-point lead. I thought Lowell was playing well. What were your thoughts on that first half?
There was a stretch there where it wasn't great, and then they able to pull away, poke the ball away, get a breakaway, Jaden Young dunk, and you go into the half up 10. I mean, all in all, it felt like okay. I mean, the spread was like 14, I think, and up 10 at half. You feel like you're well on your way to a nice, calm victory. And then the second half was just absolutely brutal. So yeah, first half felt like business as usual until it didn't.
And then I think it only took them till the 14-minute mark of the second half to get the lead, and we never really got it back. We had 16 turnovers in this game, in the Jacksonville game, just 41% from the field as a team. Jacksonville shot 52%. Neither team shot the three ball well, but Jacksonville was making their twos, getting inside, that kind of stuff. They had a kid score 19 points off the bench. Poteet led us again with 15. Lowell had 14. Rec had 11. But both Toby and Rexsteiner had 5 turnovers. And this turnover thing is a problem, and it does stem from us not having that true point. I'm not saying that Rexsteiner can't be a true point guard, but he's turning the ball over a lot, and he'd probably make a better 2 guard in a perfect world.
Yeah, I mean, the turnover thing is a huge issue, and the bigger part of it, like yes, it'd be nice if we had Hyzer Miller or Jaden Ivey Curry or whoever the point Sean Padula, whoever the point guard in a perfect world would have been. That would help the offense look better and run more smoothly. But the bigger issue when I look at it is the turnovers are coming from everywhere, 1 through 5, down through the bench. It's everyone turning the ball over, which to me is an indication of just overall really poor execution and timing and understanding of what's being asked offensively. The timing is not there, and that's so important in this offense. You heard Coach Young talk about over the years how good Hunter Couture was at cutting and timing of everything, and there's just none of that right now. Everybody seems lost, and as a result, you're seeing turnovers from 1 through 8. Everybody in the rotation turning the ball. Like you said, Toby had 5 against Jacksonville. If you go and look at the Penn State box score, it's disgusting. I believe that Toby and Malajio combined for like 8 or 9 in that one. So, if you got your 4 and your 5 turning the ball over
that
almost
shouldn't
double
be happening.
times, it's just all bad, and nobody seems comfortable in their spot in the offense. Really at any given point. And that's also probably partially why you're seeing such poor shooting is because guys are getting the ball. They're not really knowing what to do. So they just shoot it. Jaden Young shooting 26% is not something I foresaw coming into this season. What we saw from him last year was a really, really good shooter. And so far this year, he's just shooting the ball horribly. And, you contribute that to a lot of things, but man, overall, just the turnovers, the poor shots, everything just to me leads to nobody's really comfortable in their role offensively.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you could say, oh, what's the main problem with this team? I would say it's shooting, but you mentioned that offensive rhythm, right? Like that's kind of what we're lacking. Just guys knowing how to play with one another, knowing where they're going to be. And then also guys making the extra cut, the extra run around the perimeter, like whatever it takes. Like you watch Steph Curry play, he never stops moving. I've been watching a lot of Jared McCain in his first year with the Sixers. He never stops moving, and he's playing outstanding. He's probably going to be the rookie of the year. You need them to do that, but you also need them to know where each other are going to be so we can get everyone in a better rhythm, because I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to decipher. Are you missing shots because the quality of the shots isn't good? Or are you missing them just because you're missing them? I think in the first couple games, we were missing them just because we're missing them. But as we're playing teams that are slightly better, Winthrop, Penn State, Jacksonville, I know you're going to say people are going to think, oh, Jacksonville's not a good team. They're not that bad. Like they're probably about a Winthrop level team. Maybe they're better. It's still early in the season. We don't really know how good anybody is, but we've seen when you play a little bit better competition, the offense they don't know how to play with one another right now. They're 174th on offense, according to the KenPom. And as a team, we're 129th. Only one team in the ACC is worse than us. And I know we have talent issues to an extent, which we'll talk about in a minute. But like a Mike Young coach team isn't sitting at 129 in the KenPom too often.
No, yeah, that's what I think the biggest problem right now is, and you can attribute it to talent, you can attribute it to the point guard position, but I don't even think that's fair to Brandon or Ben. I think it's just kind of 1 through 8. People are just unsure of themselves offensively right now. Um, guys catching the ball in spots, and they got to make their read, making the wrong one, turning the ball over. So half the time for no reason, like not even under pressure, turning the ball over. Just indecisiveness across the board, and hopefully as they continue to play more minutes together and gel, it'll get a little bit better and we'll see more fluidity offensively. But I mean, you're looking at it. I mean, I'm looking at the lineup, Poteet, Lawal, Shutt, Shoot, Rechsteiner, Young, Johnson. I mean, none of these guys play together. So, we're 5 games into this and it doesn't look a whole lot better than it did from the start. So hopefully, I'm anticipating maybe a little bit of a simplification heading down to Florida. Um, Dialing the offense back even more to really just the baby step stuff. 1, 2 reads type thing, nothing elaborate, no long plays that take a while to develop. I'll be curious to see what the offense looks like when they take on Michigan down in Florida, but I think they might need to dial it back a little bit until guys get more acclimated with what their roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, because what happens when you don't have people knowing how to play with one another is you do end up with these like point inconsistencies, like shut or you I just the same thing you did. Shoot only
Yeah,
having 3 points. Like if he scores 3 points, we're probably not going to win many games. Like you need him to be in double digits, like pretty much every night. And if he was, this game would have been pretty close. And as everyone gets to know their roles better, you'll see more consistent point totals out of the guy you expect to score. Uh, all right, we covered shooting, we covered turnovers, readjusted expectations, Ed. Before the season, you and I gave our record predictions, and we both came in right around 500, maybe a game under, maybe a game over. But you look at that Jacksonville loss. Is it that bad? Is that like, oh man, that what a terrible loss. This changes everything for the season, or is that the kind of thing that just happens in college basketball?
both. I mean, it shouldn't have happened. You're up 10 at half and you lose the second half by 20 to Jacksonville. That's inexcusable. That's not an NIL problem. That's inexcusable. Period. That also happens in college basketball. We were talking about it before we pressed record, but Notre Dame lost to Elon this week, and you looked up a couple in the Big Ten, and this stuff does happen. NIU beat Notre Dame in college football. Keep in mind these are college kids, so this stuff does happen. It just hadn't happened to Virginia Tech in a while. It hadn't happened to Mike Young in his time here. I think he was 29-0 in those bye games that John Rothstein likes to talk about. But it does happen, and it happens when you're inexperienced, young, and haven't played a lot of basketball together. You're exposed. Like you're susceptible to that type of thing happening to you when things aren't hitting on all cylinders. And I don't think anybody would say that things are even close to hitting on all cylinders right now. So yeah, you leave yourself open to that type of stuff taking place.
Yeah. 100%, man. I mean, I remember early Buzz Williams years. We lost some games. It's like, how we just got this amazing coach. How did we do this? Well, they're young college kids. This is what happens on occasion. And you hope if you have a coach, I know like Mike Young's taking a ton of heat, and that's going to link into what we're about to talk about. But like both you and I and a number of other people that appreciate the sport of basketball know that he knows how to coach, and that sometimes this just does happen, especially when you have a young team. You lose a point guard right before the year. You have some NIL issues that change your roster up, but there's so much growth that can take place. So I'm not ready to say I'm throwing out my preseason prediction, but I do fear that we're getting like ACC play is going to be difficult. Like it's hard to watch what we've watched so far and not believe that like winning 7 games in the ACC, it could be like about as good as we can do. Like I'm worried that that could be the case. I hope that that's not true, and I hope that we can get closer to 8, 9, or 10. But it's going to be a challenge because Penn State is of the quality that a lot of the teams we're going to face in the ACC, and we really weren't very competitive in that game. So we got to get a lot better, and we got to get a lot better quickly. Let's talk about the NIL thing, the athletic department, and all that other kind of stuff, because it's been talked about a lot with regard to football. We emphasize that more going into the season, kind of put some money in that basket. maybe taking some money out of the basketball basket. And we had to lose some guys that are doing well on other teams that we liked last year. What are your thoughts on that whole thing? I just kind of got started here. I don't even know how to ask you the question correctly.
Dude, it's so multi-layered. Where to start? I mean, I'll start with this. Like, I fully recognize that Virginia Tech, as a fan base, historically, is a football dominant university and athletic department. I totally get that. Totally get that. No argument there. I tried to make this analogy early in the week. Like, it's like you run a company, right? And ultimately, that's what an athletic department is. It's a business. You're running a company that has two products that make money: football and men's basketball, realistically. Well, you basically just, if it's a software company, think about that. You have two softwares that, you sell and you make money. Well, you basically just stopped development of one of them. You just stopped developing it and said to your coaches, your sales team, go keep selling this and make us money. Well, how are you going to do that if you're not developing the back end of it? And that's what we did. We didn't put resources to one of our two money-making products. Plain and simple. And as a result, you've got Tyler Nickel averaging 15 a game for Vanderbilt right now. MJ Collins also having good games at Vanderbilt right now. Sean Padula down at Ole Miss. Guys you wanted to keep and guys that didn't want to leave. But because, ultimately it's a business. It's a business for the players now too. They had to make a business decision for themselves, and they found themselves better opportunities. So to me, it was always, you're going to fund football and you should. But at a certain point, NIL in general, and I'll just keep it specific to Virginia Tech, and maybe this is how it's being run. I don't believe it to be so because I haven't heard that anywhere about Virginia Tech or otherwise. But if you have $100,000 and you've got a returning football player who says, I want 100 grand, the way I would look at that is, okay, I can get this returner back for 100 grand. How much better is he than his replacement or the potential replacement? Say I could get a replacement for 50. Well, is the replacement for 50 plus spending 50 on basketball better for the university than putting 100 to that one guy? It might be, and I don't know if those conversations are taking place. It certainly doesn't seem like they are. So
it's just overall, like that's what
money needs to be utilized in a way that's best for Virginia Tech as a whole. It can't just be say yes to every request that comes out of the football building and just spite everybody else, because that's not what's best for Virginia Tech as a whole. And look, man, we just lost to Duke. We've got Michigan, and then I believe either Xavier or South Carolina in men's basketball this week. If you're to look at projections, we're probably going to lose both of those games. And then you've got UVA in football. So you're looking at a brutal week to be in the Virginia Tech athletic department. And it's hard to kind of feel bad for them, man. They made some decisions that I personally wouldn't have made. And as a result, you got a men's basketball roster that is entirely new. And like I said in the last segment, that newness and that youth leads to losing to Jacksonville. That kind of stuff happens when you make some of the decisions you made. And, now we're going to have to live with it. It's going to be a really interesting 7 days in the athletic department.
Yeah. And what you were saying about the cost analysis of this player versus this player, this sport versus that sport, that is a very difficult thing that you need a lot of bright minds working on, because every GM in pro sports makes a lot of money to make those decisions. And you're not just dealing with one sport, you're dealing with multiple sports and the value adds from this sport to that sport. It's complicated, man, really complicated. And yeah, I don't know if those conversations are happening. I assume on some level that they are, but I think there was obviously a big emphasis on trying to get the football team geared up for 2024. And when that has, let's just say what it is, when that has failed the way that it has, and then you're left with a basketball team that got like the pittance that was left over, it's rough. Like it's really rough. And I don't think we're saying anything that people don't kind of know. Like maybe the people that don't follow that closely, but anyone that's going to games and following both of these teams kind of knows what happened this offseason. And that's why I still am trying to keep all of the thoughts about, hey, the staff should have been doing this with basketball. They should be better. They shouldn't be turning the ball over. All of that, you have to take it with the knowledge of what we just talked about. And
Well, and that makes it sound like we're making excuses for things that are coachable and fixable. I'm not,
no, you
but
said it was inexcusable to have a 10-point lead versus Jacksonville at home and lose. You said
I'm
that.
not,
And
and the staff wouldn't. Like, if you ask them, I promise you they wouldn't. I mean, I haven't asked them, but if you did, I guarantee you
like
those
our
guys would
basketball
say,
team is better resourced than Jacksonville.
like,
Like
yeah, they would say, like, no, we turn the ball over too much. Like,
Mhm.
that's not what I'm saying here. But for all intents and purposes, the athletic department decided that this was going to be year one in year six or whatever it is for Mike Young. I mean, the roster he has is a year one, brand new, just took the job rebuild roster. I mean, he got one guy back from
It's
his
true.
rotation
I
last
mean,
year.
that's a good way to
So
look at it.
they, and they were not resourced to keep people they would have liked to keep. I mean, I'm pretty confident Tyler Nickel would have liked to stay at Virginia Tech.
He's a
Guys
Virginia
from the
kid
state,
and he
and
came
you
home.
really think MJ Collins was itching to leave? No. I mean, like, but they got a better opportunity and they're going to go take it, and they should. My argument is that they should never be in a position to be. We should never be in a position to be outbid that much. And like I said earlier, when you have two money making operations, you can't just cut off the arm of one of them. I mean, that's just you end up in a position you're in now where you're 5-6 in football and staring down the barrel of a really bad basketball season because you
Yeah.
allocated all of your money to, uh, I'll say it, a coaching staff that probably didn't deserve it.
Yeah. And people who may be listening might be like, well, the women's team is good. The soccer team just advanced to the Sweet 16. Wrestling's outstanding. Some of that is because those sports, like they operate
In a
differently, like
in a
kind of
in a
on
bubble.
their own. Like the
Yeah,
wrestling team's not really run by the athletic department. Like that's the Southeast Regional Training Center and a bunch of other things that go into that. And we're
yeah,
not going to get into all that stuff. Like the women's team has an incredible amount of devout supporters,
yes,
that will donate just to that. And it's a different NIL game with that anyway. So yes, there are positives from the athletic department as a whole, but football and basketball operate in a completely different men's basketball in a completely different
yeah,
way.
yeah. No, you're right, and that was a point I made in a couple of group chats this week. Is like the two most successful sports in the last 5 years are women's basketball and wrestling. And like you just mentioned, they operate in a bubble. Like, wrestling, with the training center you talked about and all the amazing things Coach Roby's doing, he's doing that because of how amazing he is at his job. He's not doing that because resources are being pushed his direction. Now, I'm sure he's plenty well resourced as comparative to the ACC and all those good things. I'm not saying that. I'm not
It's
saying he's
just a
not being
different world.
supported, but it's a different world. And in women's basketball, Coach Brooks and his supporters in the donor world did a fantastic job building a really, really strong donor base for women's basketball. Fantastic job. Duffy is leveraging that same group, that same infrastructure, and she's able to continue to build off of what Coach Brooks left behind. Other two, man, I mean, football and basketball, the cash cows, they don't have the infrastructure in place that they need to self-sustain. Now you could say that, um, Coach Fuente should have done a better job with that kind of stuff. You can say Coach Young should do a better job with that kind of stuff, sure. But at the same time, that analogy of, you're running a company that has two products and you stop developing one of them. This is the
Yeah.
result you get.
And at the end of the day, there's a lot of talk. Our athletic director is responsible for fundraising. That's why we brought this athletic director here. And there did seem to be a time period where that was going well. But some will argue the opposite. And it's just right now, you're not going to get anything positive about the department, about the AD. And that's so like I don't want to get into all the arguments because no one's going to have a good thing to say because the two revenue sports are in are in the gutter. So like let's not have that debate. I think we all people the diehards are on the same page, right, Ed? And
Oh yeah.
so
I think
we
everyone knows. I think everyone knows what needs to happen and what's coming.
yeah,
I mean, if you look around the country right now at football programs in the position ours is currently in, and then you overlay that with the basketball piece as well, there's not many worse. I'll tell you that much.
there's
In
not.
terms of what's taking place and what is projected out in the rest of the basketball season, we are in a league of our own in that department.
And it's crazy how you can nail 6 basketball hires, whatever it is, maybe 5, um, for our current AD, and still, like, if you don't get football right and you don't prioritize and fund your programs correctly, this is where you end up. Because for all intents and purposes, he did nail 5 basketball hires, like,
Oh yeah,
nailed them.
oh yeah. No one will argue that. No, he's crushed hiring across the board. Witt has crushed hiring across the board outside of football. Um, I guess I'll give this take and we'll move on to Michigan. But I've told a lot of people as I've thought about the current situation. He's nailed hiring across the board. There's a lot of programs in our athletic department that have had the best year or years in program history under the direction of Whit Babcock and the people
It's
he's
true.
hired to run their program. I mean, think about like baseball's had all time years, women's basketball, men's basketball,
Softball,
go softball, you go to wrestling, you go down the whole
soccer.
list. Track. I mean, everybody is crushing it in terms of relative or related to the history of that individual program, and that's all happened under Witt. But like you said, man, if you don't get football right, nothing else really matters.
It's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy because you're right, man. Olympic sport success over the past 10 years is pretty much unmatched in any point in Virginia Tech history. It,
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
it's kind of nuts.
And
All right, let's
that's
talk about.
my overall last piece of that is like maybe he's got all he can out of this. Maybe like there comes a certain point in any job where maybe you got all you could out of the role you were in, and it's time for a new look or a new vision. I don't know. It could be.
That's
We could also go on a run men's basketball, beat UVA, and win a bowl game, and all of a sudden everybody feels good again. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
yeah. When Andy Reid was with the Eagles,
Yeah,
he had done so much good over a long period of time. Didn't win us the big one, but got us there. Won a bunch of NFC Championship games,
that's a
whatever.
good comp. Yeah,
But then the weight of the period of like not getting over the hump, not winning the big one, whatever. It's not that he was a bad coach. He'd had a bad season, but he wasn't fired just because of one bad season. He was fired because it's just a long time of people getting worn out of each other and the weight of it all on everyone. And then it just ends. And he went and found success. Obviously, helps when you
yeah,
get Patrick Mahomes, but it's he was never a bad coach. And Witt might not be a bad AD, but the weight is on everyone's back right now, and it's
hmm
starting to wear thin. Let's talk about Michigan, man, because the basketball team took us a minute to get back here, but the basketball team has a game on Monday, 6 p.m. on FS1. Yes, you can watch this one, everyone. It's going
yeah,
to be on TV, real
yeah.
TV, not streaming. Uh, 6 p.m. on FS1. Michigan is 4-1. Their loss is to Wake Forest, which under Steve Forbes, Wake has been a good program, but Wake is not an outstanding team this year, and they beat Michigan 72-70. Now you look at where Michigan comes in the Ken Palm, they're number 27. Their offense is okay, it's pretty decent, but their defense is really good. And they got a bunch of guys that can play basketball, not necessarily a superstar, but a bunch of guys that spread around the points and are just good, decent basketball players. What are your thoughts on how we stack up against Michigan?
They've got two 7-footers that are going to play and play well. They also have four guys, I believe, averaging double figures. We have two by comparison. Yeah, their depth and experience. It's very similar to Penn State. Their depth and experience far outclasses ours. So it'll be a really tough test. It's the best team we've played so far. But again, when you go back and look at the Penn State stuff, the first 5 minutes were brutal, and then when the wheels fell off, it was brutal. But there was a period in there where we competed, got back into the game. We're only down by 5. But when you turn the ball over 25 times, you're going to lose. So that's the main thing I'm going to keep an eye on is the offense simplified, and if it is it working? If it's not simplified, are we able to get through our sets without turning the ball over like crazy? And I think if we can limit the turnovers, and even if you lose the turnover battle by 3 or 4, you're probably more competitive in the game. So that's the main stat I'm going to keep an eye on as we play these better teams this week, Michigan, and then either South Carolina or Xavier. Is are we able to hold our own, run our stuff, and not trip and fall? And that's what I'm going to keep an eye on.
I worry about they have 3 big veteran
Yeah.
guards, and whether they're wings or guards or whatever, but, like, they are of that style, and they're, like, 6'5". I think their point guard 6'3", but, like, they're bigger than what we are,
Oh, yeah.
and that worries me, whether defensively in particular. And so, yes, the turnovers will be key to watch. We've been despite the fact that they're going to have more size than us, because almost everybody will. They do have those 7-footers, but we have rebounded pretty well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's really about taking care of the basketball. If there's an emphasis on that, like you said, and we can just, could we make 40% from three in a game? Like, that's for one game, that's not supposed to be super hard. Like, if we hit 40% from three and don't turn the ball over a ton, I think we'll be in the game. And that, like, at this point, after what we just saw, maybe the guys come in with a new focus and they bounce back a bit against Michigan.
Yeah, we'll see how they handled the Jacksonville adversity, and you get down to Florida. Maybe you're more loose now. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I also want to keep an eye on Jaden Young. I would expect him to at some point catch a little hot streak and get his shooting percentages back into a place where you would expect them to be. But you're right, man. 40% from guys like Young and Shoot and Rechsteiner, that should be very doable.
Right.
You're not going to get a lot of shooting out of Johnson and Burnham. You're not going to get any out of, well, you'll get a little out of the wall, but you're not going to get any out of Poteet and Wessler. But yeah, I think, if we can limit the turnovers, we can stay in these games and be competitive, and who knows what happens from there. The other thing I'll keep an eye on just over the two games is, do we see any more of RJ or Rodney Brown? Those two guys we've seen a lot of this year, and I expect them to, at some point in the year, make an impact when they get their feet under them, particularly on the defensive end. So keep an eye on those two. Would love to see them get some action down in Florida.
We are seeing a lot of Ben Hammond. Like, not
We are.
maybe not. I don't know. I think his hair is really cool, but
Yeah.
I would like to see him get to, pick it up just a little bit, because he's young and he needs time to develop. But the sooner he develops, the better off we're going to be. And he is getting minutes, and
Oh yeah,
so
he's playing. He's playing pretty well. I mean, he's not like, as far as a freshman point guard goes, he's playing pretty well.
yes, yes,
He is lightning quick, man. He is so fast, and he reads the floor really well. And yeah, the more minutes he gets, the better he's going to be.
yeah. If we, well, regardless of what happens against Michigan, we're going to play Xavier or South Carolina. Both of those teams are top 100. Xavier a little bit better than South Carolina. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. I'd kind of like to see us against South Carolina. It's a slightly worse team. I think they're beatable. Xavier would be a tough ask, I think.
Getting a FaceTime.
That's the end of the pod. No, just kidding.
No, he's sending double FaceTime call. Yeah, I would love to play South Carolina again, since we played them last year. Just kind of see where we stack up with them. Obviously, they went on to have a really good year last
They
year.
did.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. Xavier's a better team than South Carolina. So South Carolina's the projected matchup there. If everything goes chalk, if we lose to Michigan and they lose, we would end up playing South Carolina for the second time in as many years, and that'd be an interesting matchup. Something to keep an eye on. But yeah, just don't turn the ball over so much, and you'll give yourself a chance.
Yeah. That's Wednesday. So, yeah, Monday night and then Wednesday evening. Thanksgiving Eve, man. Thanksgiving's this week. Are you staying local? You doing anything fun?
Staying local, staying local. Actually, hosting Thanksgiving. My wife and I are hosting
Oh,
for both sides of the family, so this will be a new little,
holy shnikes. Have you done
a
that
new
before?
new tradition. It should be interesting. I'm pulling up because you just mentioned the tournament. So if we play on Monday, what are we in, the beach division? This is hard to read. Yeah, we would play on Wednesday. What is the Palms division? Oh, okay. So I was going to say there's got to be games on Tuesday. There is. There's another part of our tournament that is lower level schools: Miami of Ohio, Jacksonville, Mercer, and Siena. Those teams will all play on Tuesday. Okay, cool. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Very
it is. It's feast week in college basketball. So there are games literally like 24/7 over this week, which is really
It's the
fun.
best. It's the
Yeah,
best.
man, it's a good week. And plus, because the NFL game's on Thursday, I'm not
Trash.
so sure anyone wants to watch the
And
Cowboys game.
Friday. There's a Friday NFL game too, and it's like the
Oh,
Raiders and the Chiefs. It's horrible.
at least there will be some college football. Is Texas A&M on Friday? I
No, it's
forget.
on Saturday.
It
That's
is.
at 7:30, and then we play
Oh, that
UVA at
makes
8.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the Clemson, South Carolina. There's only 2 ranked football games this week: Clemson, South Carolina, and Texas A&M.
But
Um,
don't you think, like, This is not a football pod, but Georgia Tech could actually be a good game.
I think it could be. I think I saw a spread was like 18 or something, but it could be a good game.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot. Well, anyway, man, this
I'll let
was
you and Sam can talk about that more.
yeah, this was good. Me and Sam will talk about a little bit of football later tonight, but I'm excited about the women, man. They're looking good, and we have names that we know and that we've seen in the past, and they're playing. Like, what a unique concept to keep some players
Yeah,
around,
yeah, no, it's
and
they've
they're
been
playing
awesome,
well.
and I think they're just going to keep getting better. Like I said, a lot of the players who are outside of Rose and Matilda, a lot of the players who are contributing at a high level are really young. So
Yeah.
it's really exciting, and continue to watch them progress, and Carly Wenzel progress. It'll be fun to follow them as the year goes on.
All right, man, that's going to do it for the show. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Sons of Saturday podcast feed on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can see my name of my pod, 2 Deep. Make sure you're subscribed there too. And Sons of Saturday YouTube channel. Go ahead, Ed.
I did want to give one more thing because signing day did come and go for men's basketball. Christian Gurdick out of Gonzaga in DC, number 94 player per 24/7, signed to come to Virginia Tech next year. 6'9", really, really skilled. I'm super excited about him.
Yeah, that's a
And then
big get.
Sincere Jones from 757, a guy that when he committed to Virginia Tech was like a middle of the pack 3-star. Another example of a really good scout by this staff. He's now rated as the 145 player for 24/7 and a 4-star. So 2 4-star guys signed to come to Virginia Tech next year. So great job on the trail by the staff.
Yeah, that's huge. Gerdak is going to be a good one for us.
Yeah,
I'm
and
hoping
Jones
that
too. And Jones
yeah.
is 6'7", freak athlete. Two really high level guys signed to
The
come on
key
board.
this offseason is to keep some of these young, nice pieces we have, because a lot of these transfers do have an extra year. And if you can combine them with some of these younger guys, it could be fun. But not all hope is lost for the men. I'm ready to see us, get a couple. Maybe if this week doesn't go good, there are a couple of games. We play St. Joe's in Philadelphia, which I'm hoping to get to. Maybe we can win the Vanderbilt game. There was a lot of conversation tonight, but it was good. And I think it was necessary to kind of frame it for some of the listeners that what's going on with both teams. But anyway, like I said, subscribe all those places. This has been the Hokie Hoops podcast. Talk to you next time.